Welcome to the Unraveling the Scriptures channel. Perhaps the name Shasu is still unfamiliar to you, but the story of this people is something that deserves to be widely known. Now, imagine if I told you that there was a group prior to the formation of Israel that already worshipped the Almighty God even before Abraham. Indeed, the Shasu were an ancient and mysterious Semitic people who revered the same God who would later be recognized as the God of Israel. In this video, we will explore the mysteries surrounding this almost forgotten civilization, revelations that may transform our understanding of the origins of the worship of Yahweh. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel to follow all the details of this fascinating discovery, the mystery of the worship of Yahweh before Israel. At first, the notion of a people before Israel who already worshipped the Almighty God might seem intriguing, even challenging. After all, it is common to associate the worship of the God of Abraham exclusively with the history of Israel. However, the Bible itself gives us clues that there were Semitic groups who, long before the emergence of Israel, already revered the supreme God. Many of these peoples, in fact, had a direct connection to Abraham. In the vast landscape of biblical narratives, there is one figure whose significance is undeniable, although often overlooked: Jethro, also known as Reuel. This remarkable character, priest of the Most High God, plays an essential role in the Old Testament, especially in the journey of Moses. His presence, though discreet, carries a profound impact, particularly in the Pentateuch and, more specifically, in the book of Exodus. The story of Jethro reveals an often underestimated dimension, but offers an enriching perspective on the worship of the God of Israel in a period before the consolidation of the Israelite nation. After fleeing Egypt, Moses heads to the land of Midian, where he finds refuge with a Semitic priest, a descendant of both the Kenites and the Midianites. This man, devoted to the God of Abraham, welcomes Moses into his home and plays a significant role in his life. Known as Jethro, also called Reuel, he not only offers shelter, but also becomes a mentor to Moses during the 40 years he spends in Midian. During this time, Moses deepens his knowledge of the traditions, stories, and practices of the Semitic peoples, an heritage to which he himself belonged. In addition to absorbing teachings related to the God of Abraham, Moses comes into contact with the customs of other Semitic peoples, expanding his spiritual and cultural understanding. His marriage to Zipporah, one of Jethro's daughters, further solidifies this bond, connecting him intimately to his ancestral roots. The figure of Jethro stands as a testament that, even before the consolidation of the people of Israel, there were other Semitic communities that worshipped the God of Abraham, demonstrating the breadth and diversity of this faith in its early stages. In this context emerges the enigmatic people of the Shasu, one of the Semitic groups who, like the Kenites and Midianites, already worshipped the God of Abraham before the consolidation of Israel as a nation. The Shasu, Shaswa in ancient Egyptian, were nomadic shepherds of Semitic language who inhabited the southern Levant. Their presence is recorded from the late Bronze Age to the early Iron Age, corresponding to the Third Intermediate period of Egypt. Living in tents and organized into clans led by tribal chiefs, these people traveled regions stretching from the Jezreel Valley to Ashkelon, passing through Transjordan, Sinai, and reaching Saudi Arabia. For the ancient Egyptians, who held historical resentments against the Hyksos, the Shasu were often seen as bandits and raiders, reinforcing a negative image. However, beyond the Egyptian perspective, the Shasu were a living example of the cultural and religious diversity of the Semitic peoples, preserving their nomadic identity while maintaining a primitive worship of the God of Abraham, which echoed in times long before the formation of Israel. The etymology of the name Shasu provides intriguing clues about the identity and habits of this people. It is believed that their origin lies in the Egyptian term Shaswa, which originally meant those who move on foot. Other scholars, such as Levy, Adams, and Muniz, suggest possible connections with the Egyptian word shases, meaning to wander, or with the Semitic triliteral root shasas, found in Hebrew, meaning to plunder or to steal. As such, the term Shasu was used by the Egyptians to designate certain groups and subgroups, possibly related to the Hyksos people. The homeland of the Shasu is also a subject of debate. Although their origin is often attributed to Transjordan, historical records indicate their presence in various regions such as Canaan, Syria, Egypt, Sinai, and Saudi Arabia. The first known mention of the Shasu dates back to the 16th century BCE in a list identifying peoples located in Transjordan. This rich and complex history highlights the Shasu as a key group for understanding the cultural and historical dynamics of the southern Levant in antiquity, illustrating how different communities interacted and were perceived by contemporary civilizations, such as Egypt. Their nomadic activities, often associated with raids and plundering, also reveal aspects of survival and adaptation that defined their identity over the centuries. Exploring the trajectory of the Shasu takes us to the end of the Bronze Age, a period in which these Semitic nomads stood out not only for their pastoral lifestyle, but also for the impact they had on the civilizations of the ancient Near East. The first documented mention of the Shasu appears in the biographical inscription of Admiral Ahmose, located in El Kab. In this inscription, Ahmose describes how he captured Shasu prisoners during a punitive expedition to the north while serving Pharaoh Akheperenre Thutmose II. These accounts indicate that the Shasu were already present and active in strategic areas of the Levant at that time. According to scholar Givion, 1971, the emergence of the Shasu during this period may be attributed to the expulsion of the Hyksos around 1550 BCE. This theory suggests that the Shasu, like other nomadic groups, could have been among the peoples who reorganized after the collapse of Hyksos rule, seeking refuge and adapting to the new political and social dynamics of the southern Levant. Ahmose's account, along with this hypothesis, underscores the complexity of the Shasu's history, emphasizing their resilience and ability to adapt to a transitional period marked by conflict and population displacement. In the 39th year of Thutmose III's reign, during his 14th military campaign, the pharaoh encountered the Shasu before reaching Retjenu, an event that indicates the presence of this group in southern Canaan, particularly in the Negev region. This confrontation was recorded in Thutmose III's list of enemies, reinforcing the strategic importance and mobility of the Shasu during that period. The name Shasu appears again in another list of Egypt's enemies, inscribed on the bases of the columns of the Temple of Soleb, built by Amenhotep III. An intriguing detail found in this temple is the mention of a place called Ser in the land of Shasu, which many scholars associate with Petra in modern-day Jordan. This reference stands out due to the phonetic similarity between Sar and Seir, a region historically associated with the Edomites. The connection between the land of Shasu and Seir is particularly significant, as it suggests a geographical and cultural overlap between these groups. Furthermore, the mention of locations such as Petra highlights the extensive movement of the Shasu, who played an active role not only as nomads, but also as a dynamic element in the geopolitics of the southern Levant and the surrounding areas. In the 13th century BCE, inscriptions on columns commissioned by Seti the Parnes or Ramses II in Amara, Nubia, mention 6 distinct groups of Shasu, those of Sar, RBN, SMT, RBR, YHW, and Pisps. These records demonstrate the geographical extent and cultural diversity of the Shasu, who were recognized as significant adversaries of Egypt in various strategic regions. The presence of these groups in different areas emphasizes not only their relevance in the political and military landscape of the ancient Near East, but also their ability to adapt and move. Among the references, the mention of the Shasu group of YHW stands out, as it suggests a possible connection to the worship of Yahweh. This connection is particularly intriguing, raising hypotheses about the religious origins and influences of the Shasu and their potential role in the spread or preservation of monotheistic practices. This association between the Shasu and YHWH opens new perspectives for the study of cultural and religious interactions in the region, indicating that the Shasu were not only military adversaries of Egypt, but also bearers of spiritual traditions that may have influenced the subsequent religious history of the Levant. The Shasu consolidated their control over the mountainous regions of Canaan, modern-day West Bank, and the lands of Transjordan, strengthening their influence to the point of disrupting trade routes linking northern Egypt for a considerable period. This growing threat prompted Ramses II and his son Merneptah to organize severe military campaigns to contain the Shasu. After the Egyptian withdrawal, the Canaanite city-states were left unprotected, becoming easy targets for both the Shasu and the feared Abiru, considered formidable enemies. Records from the 18th dynasty of Egypt document the expansion of Shasu influence in Canaan, evidenced by the large number of prisoners captured. During Amenhotep II's reign, almost half of the listed captives were from Kor or Karu. Later, the Shasu were identified as one of Egypt's main adversaries, alongside powers like Babylon and Tehanu, Libya. In the reign of Amenhotep III, the Shasu were associated with a region near the biblical city of Dothan, an area often used by Bedouins to feed and water their herds. Interestingly, the biblical narrative of Joseph in the Hebrew text also mentions nomads who brought their animals to a spring near Dothan, suggesting possible historical or cultural connections between these traditions. During the military campaign led by Pharaoh Seti I, widely known due to victory steles discovered at Tel Megiddo and Beit Shehan, the Shasu occupied a fertile and mountainous area between Sile and Parkanayan, probably near Gaza. Representations of this campaign depict the Shasu as a disorderly and rebellious people, whose tribal chiefs gathered in the hills of Kor, or Karu, to organize revolts. They are described as hostile to their neighbors and disrespectful of laws imposed by the Egyptian palace. In the same context, Seti I also faced the Abiru in the vicinity of Megiddo, highlighting the constant conflicts and instability that characterized the region. This turbulent period, marked by the actions of the Shasu, offers a rich and multifaceted perspective on power, culture, and religion in the ancient Near East, reflecting a scenario of continuous change and rivalries. The mention of the Shasu of YHW reveals an intriguing and unexpected detail. The name of the biblical god, Yahweh, is directly linked to this specific group of Shasu, who already venerated the supreme god even before the rise of the people of Israel. It is worth noting that, in addition to figures like Jethro, other Semitic peoples also served God long before the time of Moses. A notable example is Job, a central character in the book of Job, often identified as an Edomite descendant of Abraham and equally devoted to God. In the case of the Shasu of YHW, two Egyptian texts, one dating from the reign of Amenhotep III, 14th century BCE, and the other from the period of Ramses II, 13th century BCE, mention the land of the Shasu of YHW. According to researcher Michael Astor, the translation of these hieroglyphic records remarkably corresponds to the Hebrew tetragram Y, HWH, or Yahweh. This discovery is particularly significant as it precedes by more than 500 years the oldest known mention of the divine name recorded on the Mesha Stele. K. van der Toorn argues that, as early as the 14th century BCE, long before the worship of Yahweh was incorporated into Israel, groups such as the Edomites, Midianites, and Kenites already worshipped Yahweh as their god. This conclusion provides an innovative perspective on the origins and spread of Yahweh worship, suggesting that it was present in religious traditions before the formation of the people of Israel. In this context, the Shasu of YHW appear to have played a crucial role in a narrative that is still largely unknown. This panorama surprisingly reinforces the categorical assertions of biblical texts. Both the Midianites and Edomites were already serving the God of Israel before the formal establishment of the Israelite people. It is a fascinating idea, especially when considering figures like Job, often described as Edomite, and Jethro, a Midianite, both recognized for their faith in the supreme God. Although Edomites and Midianites also practiced paganism and polytheism, the worship of the God of Abraham was preserved among them, passing through generations and influencing the formation of Israel's religious traditions. Jethro, for example, played a prominent role as a priest in Midian, which suggests that he likely influenced many people to worship the Almighty God. This indicates the existence of a significant number of followers of Yahweh among the Midianites. Additionally, some scholars argue that the Israelites may have shared a common origin with the Shasu, considering that their brothers, the Edomites and Midianites, were included in this designation for certain Semitic groups. It is also worth noting that from the Egyptian perspective, the Semites were widely known as Hyksos, or Heka in the ancient Egyptian language. Now, I want to know your opinion. Had you heard of the Shasu, this ancient people or alliance of Semitic peoples who worship the Almighty God? Leave your comments below and share your thoughts. May God bless you all, and see you soon.